Welcome to another Erik Wait whiskey study, and in this video I'm going to be reviewing the Balblair 1999. But before we get into this whiskey, here are my notes. Balblair 99 Single Malt Scotch Whisky, second release. Balblair Distillery is located in Etterton, Ross-shire, Scotland, in the Highland region of Scotland. It was established in 1790 and is one of the oldest operating distilleries in Scotland. It is currently owned by Inverhouse Distillers. Balblair 1999 second release is a replacement for the 1997 vintage. It was distilled in 1997, matured in a combination of ex-bourbon and sherry casks, and bottled in 2014 at 46% alcohol by volume and without chill filtration, making it a 15-year-old malt. Now, Balblair is going through some changes. They're going from this vintage dating to an age statement dating, and the label itself is going to be going through some changes as well. And there's been a lot of controversy about this, a lot of hullabaloo in the social networking channels. So here are my notes on the changes that are going on with Balblair whiskeys. Balblair Distillery is changing their range of single malt whiskeys by replacing their iconic vintages with age statements. The Highland Distillery will introduce 4 new expressions aged between 12 and 25 years, which is being described as a new era for Balblair. The new collection will roll out globally in April 2019. Balblair Distillery has become known for its annual vintage releases, each containing whiskey distilled and laid down within one singular year. While the new range is designed to revigorate Balblair, brand manager Matthew Jameson said the whiskey isn't changing. The new whiskeys, all of which have been bottled at 46% alcohol by volume, include the Balblair 12-year-old, which is matured in ex-bourbon casks and double-fired American oak casks, Balblair 15-year-old, which has been initially matured in ex-bourbon casks followed by first fill Spanish oak sherry butts. Balblair 18-year-old has also been matured initially in ex-bourbon casks followed by first fill Spanish oak sherry butts. And finally, Balblair 25-year-old has been matured initially in ex-bourbon casks, then finished in ex-Oloroso sherry casks. Alrighty, so I personally don't really get what all the hubbub is about. It has been more of the trend of distilleries going from age statements, which is what Balblair is going to non-age statements, and there's a lot of people who've been upset about that because they suspect that the non-age statements are selling younger whiskeys, and they're sort of not really being transparent about what's in the bottle. Well, there's been a huge growth in whiskey sales. Scotch whiskey has become extremely popular. This is the another big boom for Scotch whiskey, and the result is, you know, they only have so much in supply. The bottles or the casks can quickly run out, so rather than having a lower quantity of age statements, by which then would drive up the price because supply and demand would demand that prices go up. Instead, they're doing, or more distilleries are doing blends such that they can have a proprietary name and then still achieve a good quality of flavor by focusing on the flavor rather than on the age statement, and so they're removing age statements. Well, there's been complaints about that. Now Balblair is going from vintage dating, which isn't all that common in Scotch whiskey industry, to vintage dating, which is what some other distilleries are moving away from. And then secondly, they are changing the labels. So I really don't get what all the fuss is about over this. Facebook, Balblair has a Facebook page. They had put an announcement on Facebook, and the comments that I read on Facebook were shocking. A lot of accusations. People hadn't even tasted the whiskeys. Were just really making a lot of assumptions about Balblair, assuming that you know, they're just buying some new marketing scheme. It's the marketing department that is causing them to change, and they're losing their identity and so forth. But thus far, it really doesn't seem to be the case, and you really can't judge a whiskey just based on a changing on a label and the fact that they're still being, you know, transparent. They're still giving an age statement. They're just not using vintage dating, which sort of requires the drinker to actually do a little bit of math to figure out how old the whiskey is inside the bottle. So they're getting away from that and being actually a little clearer about the age of the whiskey. Now, another thing that's changing is the bottle shape looks very, very similar as you saw there, but the labeling is changing. So they're going to a larger label, a clearer font, and actually, I took some marketing classes and for studying enology winemaking, and some of the class actually projects we had were on designing labels and understanding various principles which are better for catching of the eye, and you know, for looking on a shelf, on a store shelf, you know. And one of the things they're doing is they have a larger label that's more centered rather than sort of slightly off to the side, bigger, bolder letters that are actually clearer. So from a marketing standpoint, in terms of clarity for the reader, I actually think it's an improvement. Now, I like this bottle. It has this engraving here that is reminiscent of the picked stones. There's this ancient picked stone near the distillery. I visited there in June 2018. And so I like that design. It gives it more of a historic look to it. But other than that, everything looks pretty similar for the bottles. And the vintage dates are looking really, really good as well. They're not going, you know, super, super low vintages. They're still providing some quality whiskeys and some aged whiskeys in there. All right. So now I haven't tasted any of the new bottles yet, but just from, I would say, from a marketing standpoint, from a labeling standpoint, and from a principle of clarity for the consumer, I actually think it's a really, really good idea. But I'll hold my judgment on those whiskeys, because what we really think is really important is what's in the bottle, not just what's on a label. All right, let's get into this one. Really, really a lovely nose. I get, it's sort of like the frosting on a carrot cake. There is a dried fruit note along with a sort of a cake note, sort of like a panettone roll. Definitely some orange citrus, a little bit of lime, a little bit of lemon, light caramels, some green apple, and hints of chocolate as well. All right, on the palate. One more. Medium bodied, slightly sweet up front. It sort of goes a little bit more dry on the back end. But on the palate, I get the same thing that I had on the nose. Sort of these fruit cake notes, or panettone roll, orange, citrus, lime, lemon, almost but more of like an orange peel, some green apple, a little bit of melon, hints of chocolate. And when I was a kid, we used to get these, it was like an orange candy with sort of a chocolate center to it. The orange characteristics and the slight little chocolate notes to it kind of remind me of that. It's got a nice development, pretty long finish. It's not so sweet that it goes into sort of a dessert character, but it's got some really nice sherry notes. In fact, I would say it almost gets a little bit of fig and raisins on the back end as well. I would be very much interested in getting one of the new bottles and then put it up against this one and see if they're still maintaining the quality of the whiskeys. I loved visiting the distillery. It was one of the best tours I had. The tour guide was really, really knowledgeable, and I had a really, really excellent time there. I visited Glenmorangie. I stayed at the Dornoch Castle in Dornoch, and there's a distillery there as well. And then I visited Balblair. It was sort of towards the end of my trip in 2018. All right, so that's about it for this review. If you subscribe to this channel, well, thank you very much. If you have any comments or questions, any input, what are your thoughts about the changes with Balblair? I know people are getting a little scared because a lot of changes are going on with a number of different distilleries, and people are concerned that there maybe this is sort of new bandwagon of marketing sort of running things. People really concerned about that. You know, things going on in Macallan, of course, Highland Park, and some other distilleries, but I don't think that's what's going on there. Anyway, but if you think differently, I want to hear your comments down below. And if you've had this whiskey, I want to know what you think. Alrighty, that's it for this video. Until next time, cheers. Hey, if you like my review, be sure to check out these other whiskey videos.